Did you know that 70% of the female population in Nigeria's tertiary institutions have experienced sexual harassment? I bet you didn't, but now you know. According to the Gender Mobile Initiative in 2022, 70% of the female population in Nigeria's tertiary institutions have experienced sexual harassment. In 2019, an undercover reporter investigation led by Women Radio was used by BBC to expose sexual harassment at 2 universities in Nigeria and Ghana. And this one sparked a lot of debate about the problem of sex for grades in higher institutions. The exposure led to swift dismissal of the lecturers involved. Sex for grade is a corrupt practice, usually by lecturers of institutions who demand sex to pass their student. They get to intimidate this student using different forms, harassing them, threatening to fail the student, and some even going as far as actually failing the student, knowing that the students will be at their mercy, thereby taking advantage of this student helpless situation. Today on Unmasking the Truth, we look at whistleblowing as a solution to sex for grade. We engage students and lecturers on this. Let's hear what they have to say on whistleblowing as a solution to sex for grade. Unmasking the Truth is an initiative of St. Ives Communications in partnership with Voice of Women and supported by the MacArthur Foundation. My name is Esther Alaribe. Let's hear from the students.
Da yadda yake kawon luna kawai sai na ce kai na san mutumin na abin da yake nufi. To da na ga na je so 4 kuma ya ce sai na dawo da yamma lokacin ba kowa. Sannan mu yin department din mu yamma tai ba za ki samu mutane ba zai zama da sai malamai. Kuma kin ga malami kowa yana office din shi na ce kai sai na kira mama na sai na ga mata sai ta ce to kan na je ma kawai. Sai na ci gaba da addu'a Allah ya sa na zo na wuce. Amma ya san da ya dan kada ni a course ban faɗi a cousin ba amma ya rage min marks sosai ma saboda cousin ne ba wani mai wahala ba wanda in dai mutum ya dage ya san me yake insha Allah zai ci. To amma haka san da yayi haka ya sa na wani. So in dai irin malaman nan akwai su. So ita mace ɗaliba kamata ita ma ta ki zama mai kamun kai. Dole zaki fuskanta irin wannan matsala a matsayin ki na mace amma yana zuwa da sauki in ke ma kina kama kanki. Saboda malaman nan ba su da imani gaskiya yawancin su. Kai a baki ne za a zo a yi magana class daga baya kuma baki san abubuwan da suke ba kuma in suka sa ma mace ɗaya ido to ta shiga uku. Wani ma in ya samu in ya Allah ya ɗaura shi ya samu ya ci burin shi akan ta zai je ga ma ɗayan abokin shi malami to haka za su ta irin daga wannan malamin zuwa wancan malamin su ta baki wahala a courses su dan duk sai sun samu saboda samu abin da suke so.
Whistleblowing plays an important role in exposing corruption and holding perpetrators accountable. By providing a safe and confidential avenue for students to report misconduct, whistleblowing will empower students and staff to speak out against sex for grades practices without the fear of reprisal. Because a lot of students are actually very scared of calling out these lecturers and thereby being at the mercy of other lecturers who, of course, one way or the other want to cover up for their friends and would end up failing their student. Whistleblowing would uncover wrongdoing, initiate investigations, and also help to implement disciplinary actions. And in today's episode, we'll look at whistleblowing as a means of combating academic corruption against female students. And my guest for today is Dr. Sekinat Adebusola Lasisi from Olabisi Onabanjo University in Agobwoye, Department of History and Diplomatic Studies. Good evening, Dr. Lasisi. How are you doing today?
Good evening, my darling. Good evening.
Thank you for joining us.
I'm good. I'm fine.
How was your day?
Yeah, it's been, as usual, tedious, but we move on.
Of course. Well done. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you too.
Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So based on the video, we saw a video recently of a lecturer in Nsukka circulating. Those video went viral on social media. What are your views on the rise of sex for grades, especially where male academic staff get to harass female students, and how critical it is when you want to look at the correlation between this conversation and quality education in Nigeria?
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, what do we mean by sex for grade? Sex for grade is the practice of exchanging sexual favors, for academic grades or for other academic or educational benefits. Okay. Now, this is highly unethical. It is illegal, and it's also a violation of the trust and professional boundaries. Okay. How critical is it to quality education? Yes, this is an aspect of illegality that is very critical to quality education. Okay, and I'll highlight my answer by saying one, it's when this occurs, it often diminishes academic integrity. It diminishes academic integrity when we tie this academic success to sexual favors. Okay, it removes the integrity that is supposed to be attached to the educational system, and then this may eventually affect the students. The students may lose faith in fair assessment. Of course, when we have so many students in a class and then one is able to negotiate her ways to get high scores, of course, the others won't like it. And so it will question the fairness in the assessment of or the credibility of such qualifications. Aside from this, it also brings about a negative impact on the learning environment. By this, I mean the environment becomes a kind of hostile one, where students feel inadequate and scared of continuing. Some may even drop out, as the case may be. In some cases, some students drop out when victimization sets in and all that. And then it also undermines gender equality. Of course, it undermines gender equality. It also leads to a deterioration in the trust in such institutions. Okay, these are a few impacts that I know will impact on the quality of education.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Lasisi. Some students have told us about how sex for grade actually affects their mental health and how this actually puts them off. Now, how does sex for grade corruption affect student academic performance and their mental health? We've had cases of some students saying that after this incidences happened, or when they started facing this kind of threats from these male lecturers, whenever they see them, they have anxiety, they have palpitations, some of them have wet hands, they're unable to concentrate in class. Imagine being in the class, being tutored by a lecturer who has just harassed you, was just threatening to do one or two things to you, and you just cannot focus.
Of course, I'll also go by saying that one, when there is a request for sex before being graded or before being awarded high marks or whatever marks, so to say, it may lead to a distraction and stress on the part of the students. The students who receives the sexual advances may suffer from significant emotional stress. This is very true. It may also lead to fear and anxiety, and this will eventually affect the student's focus. Once you're afraid that, whenever the lecturer comes in, the student gets scared and then loses concentration and is unable to continue. Then aside from that, the student may also lose confidence. There are some students who are good on their own, and then when lecturers begin, let me say that sometimes these lecturers also fish out students who have low grades. Students they know will easily succumb, These are some of their victims. And so when such a thing happens, such students may perpetually lose confidence in themselves, and maybe this will eventually affect their mental health. Aside from this, it is also it may also lead to some kind of pressure, and then compromise may follow. You understand? Once this is being asked too often and all that, the students may eventually give in, not because the student actually wants the sex, but they give in so that, well, she could pass, and then will not have to, repeat or retake that course. But let me also say that sometimes the students also cause this. Sometimes we have students who want lecturers for scores. You understand what I'm saying? Okay. It is, although we don't blame people who suffer rape and all that, or sexual violence, but sometimes the student may even be the one that wants the lecturer. I have seen that happen in some cases. You understand? The student makes advances, does all sorts of things so that the lecturer will ask, for sex, and then they go on along that way. But in both cases, what we are trying to look at is that sex and score. The negotiation between the sex and whether it was the student that asked for it or the lecturer that asked for it, on both sides, it is highly illegal, and it's unethical.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Lasisi, for your comments right there. Unmasking the Truth on your radio station is addressing whistleblowing as a means of combating sex for grades against female students in Nigerian tertiary institutions. This program is an initiative of St. Ives Communication in partnership with Voice of Women and supported by the MacArthur Foundation. Ensuring the anonymity and confidentiality of whistleblowers is very essential to protect them from retaliation and harassment. Reports should be handled by trained professionals, prioritizing the safety and privacy of individuals coming forward to speak their truth. Let's hear from more students on what they have to say about whistleblowing as a solution, and also having talk about sex for grades in tertiary institutions.
Ìsìn nǹkan tó ti ń ṣẹlẹ̀ tipẹ́tipẹ́ ni láti ayé tó ti pẹ́ títí mọ́ wípé tẹ́ bá fi lè béèrè lọ́wọ́ àwọn ọmọ tí wọ́n wà ní iléèwé girama secondary school, wọ́n máa sọ fún yín pé tó bá ti close mọ́ teacher ó pọn dandan kó máa fún ẹ ní mark tí kò dẹ̀ yẹ kó máa rí bẹ́ẹ̀. So ajá sí wípé títí mọ́ àwọn tí mark yẹn gan tọ́ sí gan wọn kì í rí gbogbo irú àwọn wà báyìí kò dẹ̀ dáa. Ṣùgbọ́n oríṣiríṣi ọ̀nà ni a lè fi dẹ́kun gbogbo àwọn ìwà yìí. Alákọ̀ọ́kọ́ níbẹ̀ ni wípé ṣé tí bá fi lè bọ́ta tí bá fi lè sọ̀rọ̀ wípé irú nǹkan báyìí ló ṣẹlẹ̀ o, irú nǹkan báyìí ni olùkọ́ yìí sọ fún mi pé kì í ṣe o, ìjẹ́ ẹ máa gbà mí gbọ́. Àìmọye obìnrin wà tó jẹ́ wípé wọ́n ti wá síta rí, wọ́n ti sọ rí pé òkè o lecturer yìí ó ní pé kí wá bá òun sùn kóun tó lè fún mi ní máàkì yìí o, àbí bóyá mo miss test yìí o, mo wá lọ bá létà o, ó wá ń fìlọ̀kulọ̀ lọ mí o. Tí bá fi lè bọ́ta tí bá sọ ṣọ́ máa gbà mí gbọ́. Àìmọye irú àwọn ìṣẹ̀lẹ̀ báyìí ló ti ṣẹlẹ̀ tó jẹ́ pé wọ́n ti lọ report, wọ́n ti lọ fẹjọ́ sùn àwọn lecturer àgbà tó jẹ́ wípé wọn ò kà kún torí wọ́n wò pé àwọn lọ ní agbára lọ́wọ́. Nítorí ẹni púpọ̀ nínú àwọn olùkọ́, àwọn akẹ́kọ̀ọ́ wọn kì í fẹ́ sọ̀rọ̀ sókè lórí irú àwọn ìṣẹ̀lẹ̀ tó ṣẹlẹ̀ báyìí tí kò dẹ̀ yẹ kó máa rí bẹ́ẹ̀. Irú organizations ó yẹ kó wà nínú school, ó yẹ kó wà nínú iléèwé tó jẹ́ wípé tí akẹ́kọ̀ọ́ bá lọ sọ nǹkan tí ó ń go through níléèwé, ó yẹ kí wọ́n máa gbàgbọ́, kó máa believe ẹ̀. But the first step, like nǹkan tó yẹ ká kọ́kọ́ I don't know.
Dr. Lasisi, as you can see, listening to this last student, you can tell that there's actually so much. And the fear and not being able to come out because you're not sure if people would believe you is another reason why we're asking that. What kind of support services do you think should be provided to students who report being sexually harassed by male lecturers in return for grades? Because this student mentioned something. Having to come out to say oh, this lecturer is harassing me or is threatening me, how many people would believe me? Now, it is one thing for you to report and be believed. Even after reporting, you don't feel safe because you don't know who's coming back for you. You don't know who's coming after you. So what kind of support services do we need to put in place for this female student?
Yeah. The first thing I would encourage is confidential counseling. Confidential counseling. There should be access to confidential counseling in all schools. I know that all schools have guidance and counseling units. And this counseling unit must be handled as such. Confidential is very important because even in the home, even within the home, when things happen, you find out that if you don't bring yourself to the level of those children, you won't get the truth. And then when you don't give them that confidence to talk to you, you won't be able to get it. So for the counseling unit, it has to be those who are qualified, well trained, and then sometimes there should be continuous training for them so that they can acquire more skills in order to deal with this sensitive issue, because this issue is very, very sensitive. Now, aside from that, there should also be legal assistance, which should be provided to the students in order to help them, one, to even know their rights is an important thing, to know and understand their own rights. Because most students don't even know in the first instance that they could make a report. Once you don't even know the rights, every student has that right to report. But the fear of, being stigmatized, or the fear of collaboration by other lecturers, make the students to actually cow out, and they don't come out to actually say what is going on. But with a good counseling unit, this legal assistance, and then there should also be a medical support for students, because particularly for students who suffer harassment, they naturally need medical support. They need medical support, and then referrals to be made from these supporting medical outfits. There should also be awareness and prevention programs. Once in a while, for example, your radio station could just make jingles, or could visit some schools, make it play sounds, talk about it. Let's keep talking. Let's keep making people aware, because when once people are aware, one, and then they know that it is their right, then we will be able to get there. It's not something that is easy to stop, but at least we start from somewhere. These programs can include workshops, training sessions, educational materials that are aimed to promote cultural respect. All of this I know will sum up to help provide some kind of shade, some kind of shield, some kind of protection for the students that find themselves in this situation. Aside from this, also, we should also institute a kind of follow-up. The follow-up should be ongoing. Once the students make that report, maybe through the counseling unit or something, and then the necessary areas, units of the university is being aware, then there should be some kind of follow-up. Check the student's grade, call her after some time, talk to her, make her feel at ease. And there should also be academic support too. There should be academic support which will be provided so that the students will be able, will not be sometimes there should be, for example, now, when I say academic support, let me just give a vivid example. There was a time, some students were allocated to a lecturer for long essay, and then the lecturer started to ask for the impossible. But fine, the student was bold enough to report to the HOD, and what the HOD did was to just change the supervisor. Okay, he didn't bring any rows, he didn't bring any noise, but the HOD was quite understanding and changed the supervisor. You understand? So in some of these cases, we find out that lecturers are not it is not all lecturers that are wolves. Majority of us are also parents, and we care about these students. Do you understand? So we only need the students to speak up. We just need the students to speak up. So those are some of the things that could be put in place to support the students who find themselves in this kind of situation.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Lasisi. We get to hear from another student. Let's hear what they think about this conversation.
To make them encourage students to they speak up and report any case of sex for grade, sorry. Another thing we say the school fit set up confidential channels where the students for the report. Another one we say make them provide training and orientation for lecturers on professional conduct and how they could maintain appropriate boundaries with students. And another thing we say make the admission and grading process more transparent and accountable, so students no go feel like them need to trade sex for marks. The most important thing we say the schools and the authorities gats show them say them they serious to stop this kind of thing from happening. If them follow all these steps, then fit introduce the case. They fit reduce the cases of sex for grade in our campuses today.
We're still talking sex for grades and whistleblowing as a solution. My name is Esther Laribe, and my guest is Dr. Sekinat Adibusola Lasisi from Olabisi Onabanjo University in Agorwe, Department of History and Diplomatic Studies. Now, Dr. Lasisi, what practical steps do you think can be taken to ensure that these perpetrators of sex for grades are brought to book, especially in cases where the student are able to come out, speak their truth? How do we ensure that there's no lecturer or anybody who's going to be on the committee who is going to try to shut them up or play with their evidences just in a bid to support the offender in this conversation?
Well, bringing the perpetrators of sex for grade to justice requires a really, really comprehensive approach. Okay. Some of the steps that could be taken is one, strict policies have to be implemented. Strict policies. Now, all educational institutions need to establish and also enforce clear policies that prohibit sexual harassment. And I must tell you that it is there. This policy is there in all the institutional codes of conduct. It is there. But then, because this is there, the institution should also raise some awareness. They can conduct regular awareness campaign, training sessions, both for staff and students. When during workshops, during congregational gatherings and all that, these things ought to be mentioned so that we can, continue to keep the number low. Okay? At least once, we can always be reminded. We know that it is in the code of conduct, okay, but people should be reminded often. Okay. Now, there must also be a kind of reporting mechanism that has to be instituted. This reporting mechanism, like I said earlier, must be confidential and it must be accessible to the students. It must be accessible. so that students who have this kind of situation, who find themselves in this kind of situation, can easily make a report once they know that this is confidential. Such reports could also be, in recent times, we could initiate some kind of online reports, maybe a report portal, which will a report portal could be created.
Okay.
For that report portal now, the names of the student will not be needed to create confidentiality and to make the students comfortable to make such reports. Do you understand?
Yes.
So, and then there should also be trained personnel who can also assist these victims in filing complaints when there's a complaint, particularly if the complaint comes through the counseling unit, through the channel of that counseling unit. The person on ground that wants to file the case has to be a professional, has to understand what it takes.
Is expected.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, as I just mentioned, I said there must be, we must raise awareness or improve awareness. Strict policies must be implemented. Aside from that, I said we should also promote some kind of reporting mechanisms, and that's why I suggested a kind of report channels or report portals where students can just log in without needing to put their names and matric numbers, so that such students could not be. But sometimes we should also apply some caution.
Okay.
You understand? Because students are also mischievous.
So, Dr. Lasisi, at this point, I think it would be worthy to note that this conversation is a very, very extensive one, and would like to continue this conversation with you some other time. Honestly, because this angle you just raised now of some students being mischievous, I would like to hear you expand on that one when we have much more time to talk about this, really, because you have been in the academic field and you definitely know what you're talking about in this regard. So we'd love to hear from you, and I really hope that when we invite you again that you would take our invitation.
I will.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Lasisi. Thank you, and do have an amazing evening.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
Thank you.
And I pray that we get to promote more of sanity in our institutions.
Yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Lasisi. Thank you. So, just like we've said and we've heard from Dr. Lasisi today, implementing a whistleblowing as a solution to sex for growth is very important for us to be able to sanitize these institutions and guide students against distractions and all of this mischief that some male lecturers get to perpetrate across the institutions. If you have a story on how corruption and lack of accountability affects women in your community, do send us a text or a WhatsApp message on 070-317-56537. In our next episode, we'll be shedding more light on anonymous reporting processes. Unmasking the Truth from the Gender Lens is an initiative of St. Ives Communications in partnership with Voice of Women and supported by the MacArthur Foundation. Thank you to the production team of Nafisat Abdulaziz, Taiwo Adileye, Amanda Meneke, and executive producer Tom Okewale Shonaya. My name is Esther Alaribe. Good evening.